I've seen the word epidemic thrown around, and I think that's very accurate. Like this is an issue that seemingly is not going away, but in the last handful of days, we've received news that Shane Bieber will have season-ending TJ. Eury Perez will undergo season-ending TJ. Jonathan Loizaga is, I think he's avoiding TJ, but will have season-ending surgery to repair the UCL. I don't know if that's like a...
How do you repair the UCL and not categorize it as TJ? I don't know what that's all about.
Is it one of those internal brace situations?
I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I think he's opting for the internal brace route. But either way, and then on top of that, you've got Spencer Strider, who...
There's serious concerns. That's what I keep seeing.
I don't want to necessarily speak it into existence, but I think we're close. We're knocking on the door.
I think we can chalk it up.
And like you say all the time, it's one of these things where if this is the conclusion that they're reaching behind closed doors, why not just get it out of the way? Like why are we waiting to make this kind of decision? I understand you want to explore all courses of action there, but you know, the forearm, the elbows, those are never good places to start when it comes to an injury. Those never lead to good news.
No. But I think the difference of like for the perfect example of saying like Garrett Cole going to get a second opinion, there wasn't like obvious structural damage. At least they didn't come out and say that. The Braves are coming out and saying that. Like there is cause for serious concern. We're getting a second opinion, but like, I don't know, man. The only name, because like for us to sit here and say like, yeah, it's most likely going to end up in TJ. The only name I can genuinely come up with is when Tanaka opted out and went like a rehab route and was able to come back the same season and ended up being pretty good. But that's like a one-off anomaly situation. I think it's so unfortunate to say that like a lot of these power arms and like power pitchers, it's like we're just waiting for the first one to get out of the way. Like TJ is inevitable eventually, which is sad.
Yeah. On that note, I do have a couple items of data here from USA Today. I was reading an article that they had released very, very recently in wake of these reports, but they said that there were more than 260 major league and minor league pitchers in 2021 who had elbow surgeries, an increase of more than 400% from 10 years ago. And then in regards to what you were saying of it's almost a foregone conclusion that at least one is going to happen, and you're just kind of waiting for that second hat to drop. It said USA Today said pitchers requiring a second Tommy John or elbow surgery has now doubled.
Yeah, dude. I still think I know the immediate question that everyone's going to, especially on Twitter. It's like, is it pitch clock? Is it pitch clock? I think it is a perfect storm of things. Them taking away grip entirely for pitchers has to be it. And I keep it recycled today, and I'm so glad it did, because that Glass Now interview that happened a few years ago, I think it was COVID. Didn't he get hurt in COVID? And then, or was it 2022 he got hurt and then missed last year?
I feel like it was 22. I think it was 22.
He got hurt, but he breaks down. It's a really good interview. If you haven't seen it, it's maybe 2 or 3 minutes long, but he really like breaks down of talking about what happens when a ball loses its tackiness and how it gets like, he describes it as like dusty, like it's like dirt, but it slides. And so what he's doing is having to grip a fastball deeper in his hand, having to grip a curveball. He's like talks about choking it. And what that does by gripping it harder is that you're going to get that pressure and that strength coming out of your forearm, where he talks about, like, my pitching coach wants me to treat this thing like an egg. Now I can't because of this grit. And he admits to being, hey, sunscreen and rosin was like my thing. And he's like, you best believe any of your favorite pitchers have been doing the same thing. So again, this just goes back to, like, in the MLB PA coming out with that statement about, like, you know, the MLB needs to crack down and stuff. Like, you're the one that's accepting these rule changes. Like, there has to be a mutual agreement. You're saying yes to this. Like, both sides need to come together and come up with some type of legal substance.
Are you're referring to the statements that came out?
Yeah.
So I've got those queued up here for you.
It was a quick one, right? It was only like a couple sentences.
Yeah.
From the Players Association anyway.
Yeah. So what MLB came out and said, or I think the statement was officially from Tony Clark, but the statement said, despite unanimous player opposition and significant concerns regarding health and safety, the commissioner's office reduced the length of the pitch clock last December, just one season removed from imposing the most significant rule change in decades. Since then, our concerns about the health impacts of reduced recovery time have only intensified. The league's unwillingness thus far to acknowledge or study the effects of these profound changes is an unprecedented threat to our game and its most valuable asset, the players. Very shortly after that, the league came out and responded, saying this statement ignores the empirical evidence and much more significant long-term trend over multiple decades of velocity and spin increases that are highly correlated with arm injuries. Nobody wants to see pitchers get hurt in this game, which is why MLB is currently undergoing a significant comprehensive research study into the causes of this long-term increase, interviewing prominent medical experts across baseball, which to date has been consistent with an independent analysis by Johns Hopkins University that found no evidence to support that the introduction of the pitch clock has increased injuries. In fact, JHU found no evidence that pitchers who work quickly in 2023 were more likely to sustain an injury than those who worked less quickly on average. JHU also found no evidence that pitchers who sped up their pace were more likely to sustain an injury than those who did not.
Yeah, see, and that's what I'm saying, is that I think this is like a microcosm of the perfect storm, right? When you have, and I don't think anybody but a player can specifically come out and say, like, hey, that time in between reps. I mean, think about like an average Joe going to the gym. You finish a set of bench press, shoulder press, tricep pull downs, whatever you're doing. You finish a set, and like sometimes you need 45 seconds to a minute to get into that next set. And so for this type of action, for a pitcher to do this over and over again, like you can't just say across the board that it doesn't affect anybody. You're talking about guys that pitch differently. You're talking about guys that, you know, but overall, I mean, our game is obsessed with velocity, is obsessed with spin. And Chris Bassett came out and said it before in spring training. He did an interview saying, like, we need to get back to pitching. We need to get back to our game being okay with 92, 93 and spotting up. And those guys getting a chance, because, I mean, how many minor leaguers fizzle out because they don't crack into the 96, 97 range? You know what I mean? How many guys get overlooked because they can't? We're so obsessed with it. John Smoltz is quoted saying, like, I only geared up maybe 4 or 5 times during an outing where I'm going 100%. The rest of the game has to be 90%, 80%, like whatever it is to get through. And so, like, when we talk about our game like changing so much, it's just a perfect storm. I'm not going to sit here and solely blame it on pitch clock, but I'm not going to say pitch clock is completely innocent in this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've both shared our thoughts on the pitch clock, especially shortly thereafter the news was introduced that was going to become a thing in Major League Baseball. And I know us and a lot of other people jumped on that, and rightfully so. Like, it certainly introduced some issues to the game that weren't there before, although it did, it's alleviated some other things. But it's important, I think, for us as baseball fans to step back and realize, like, we can't just make the pitch clock the boogeyman. Like, this is a much more complex issue.
100%.
And that, to your, like you were saying, I think it's a perfect storm. I think this infatuation with velocity has only continued this trend of throwing instead of pitching. And you open up social media and you see drills of these high schoolers and college players doing just the most asinine things where you're like, there's no way.
Remember when we were kids, like, weighted balls were like scary. Like, don't touch those. Like, don't do that too often. And now you're just seeing kids long toss
with weighted balls. What? That's not, the human body is not designed to do that.
No,
it's just not. And kind of going off of that, there's a tweet from our friend of the show, Dallas Braden. He put out a tweet that I think made great sense on that very issue. He said, "We are bigger, faster, stronger than we've ever been as humans. We have tech to aid in creating the most efficient movement patterns that generate maximum velocity. I believe we have hit our evolutionary cap as far as the force the human body can tolerate in regard to the torque we're able to create. We know how to build I love this. He said, we know how to build the engines, but it feels like the frame just can't handle the horsepower. There's a lot more nuance to this aside from, quote, guys just throw too hard."
Yeah.
I don't think you can put it any better than that. Like,
the most perfectly worded summarization I've ever heard.
We have, I think I have to agree with them. I think we've maxed out. We've capped out on what we can do velocity wise. I don't see us like going any further with this.
Right.
And I think you're seeing it in the shape, in the form of these injuries. Like, the human body just cannot keep up.
I agree. I don't know, man. Like, I think there's certain ways, like, you remember how we were so nervous about the pitch clock when it first came out, and it was on every score bug, like all the time it was popping up. Now it's like a lot of score bugs don't even have it on there. Like, there is, like, I know I watch some games, you don't even see a pitch clock until there's possibly a violation. Maybe we get rid of the radar gun. Maybe we just stop showing it so much. Maybe it's an in stadium type thing, but the obsession is scary at this point. It really is.
It quite literally is an obsession. Like I said, you open up social media, you see these guys. They're, it's a group of teammates from a given high school or college team. And they're all huddled up in some sort of indoor facility. They've got the nets dropped down, and they're going just full send into the nets. Yeah. With no concern for accuracy or mechanics. It's just what's the highest number we can hit on that radar gun.
And celebrating.
Yeah. Like
cracking 90 at 13 years old. Like, it's just insane.
What are we doing?
Yeah, I agree. I did find myself going down a little bit of a rabbit hole on Twitter. There's some guy that's like, he's been doing it for a while, probably a year plus, talking about this. It's a delivery issue. And he's like freeze framing these pictures of pitchers that are like at here, like glove side, but they're flat here. And then they'll have like a picture of like Nolan Ryan and he's up. And he's talking about how like anywhere in this range is fine. 90 degrees up with the arm all the way down to maybe 45. When you start getting flat, and he's like predicting injuries before they're happening. He's like, this guy's eventually going to have this. And it's like, I don't know. But it does go into the account that like what Dallas was saying about like, we have these sensors, like you have guys putting on sensors all over their body in the off season, figuring out how to posture themselves mechanically to put as much possible torque that they can to create that velocity. And it's like our bodies aren't made for this, man. Our bodies are not made for this.
And look, I want this to be heard. I'm not knocking the innovation. Like the whole,
I think there's a lot of good that's come out of it.
Sure. And like the max effort into the nets, I've seen that. I've had enough of that. I'm out on that. Mm-hmm. and things like that. But you know, with these a lot of the things that we didn't have growing up playing ball, it's like I'm not gonna, just because I don't understand it doesn't mean I'm gonna knock it. I understand that there's a major wave in terms of development, understanding just how the body works and how that relates to performance on the diamond. But I think we need to, dare I say, slow it down, let this research catch up a little bit and say, and realize rather, oh, maybe this quest of throwing 115 maybe is not a worthwhile endeavor. Yeah. Because we're seeing through this data, through these tests, that the human body just can't do it.
Yeah.
And I think the innovation is outpacing the data, to put it simply. Like I think that it's going to take, I don't know how many more injuries like this it's going to take. How many more reports of guys having multiple TJs?
I think we're going to see a ton of Band-Aids. I think we're going to see a ton of Band-Aids over the next few years, and it's potentially some type of change to the mound, a normalization of a 6-7 man rotation. Like it is this, it's just this perfect storm of all these things. These guys not getting built up and ramped up properly in minor league systems because they're trying to save bullets, right? Like it's this recovery time where you have guys like reporting back quicker. You have some guys that don't know when to take time off. Like it's tough, man. There's going to be Band-Aids. There's going to be random things that they're going to try and do. I bet they change the criteria for a win, making the win more relevant. Maybe we drop it down to 4 innings instead of, it's like, it's not like it's going to solve things in my mind. I think we need to get back to like, it sounds kind of old man and grumpy, but like we got to get back to the pitchers we grew up watching and guys that are throwing upper 80s and low 90s, but like can place wherever they want and then gear it up to 95 every once in a while. Like that's got to become more of an acceptable thing by organizations.
Yeah, by that's teams, where it starts. It starts scouting, from the top.
Yeah, like they have to be okay with that stuff. If you can get outs, I don't care. That has to be more the mentality.
No, and I agree with you. And on that, I don't have the number pulled up, but in that article that I was reading, or one of the articles I was reading, it talked about the money that these teams are spending on the side effects, the collateral damage of these injuries. And it's a lot, man. I think it's like in the billions, like the tests you gotta have run, the contracts that, like the guaranteed contracts that you gotta fork out for guys that are, just riding the pine, rehabbing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But to what you were saying, I agree with you. I think it needs to become more acceptable, more widely accepted. But I at least right now, I have a hard time seeing that because it's not sexy. What's sexy is or continuing that pursuit that I was talking about of we've hit the 103, 104 mark now. Yeah. Now let's get to 10 or let's get to 110.
Yeah.
How can we get to 110? Once you get to 110, if that's even possible, how do we get to 115? Like it's just going to be this never ending pursuit. And I think like with anything, too much of anything, too much of a good thing becomes a bad thing. Yeah. And I think this pursuit of increased velocity, it's gonna flip the game on its head. And I just have a hard time seeing players, especially at the younger level, and even at the major league level, putting the brakes on and saying we have to stop. Like this is getting too much, because there's you could go into the weeds on it, but at the end of the day, pretty safe to assume that velocity equals dollars for a team, because the velocity means that pitcher's going to have a little bit more of an edge, assuming they can spot, and that means they're going to provide a little bit more output, and that's going to be more dollars in the pockets of these teams.
Yeah.
So I just have a hard time seeing these teams getting together and be like, we gotta dial it back.
Yeah.
Until we get to the point where they're losing entire rotations over the course of a year.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I just don't see how we stop it.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I would say if there's any dads or coaches out there for youth that are listening, I do think it's try to subdue that obsession in some way. And there's no reason a 12-year-old should be worrying about a radar gun. You know what I mean? This is something it's been shoved in kids' faces, and they're obsessed with it, way, way, way too soon. There's something about, like, there's a reason why our game is what it is. There's something about certain old school things that you can't really necessarily change it, But there's Band-Aids coming. That's my thought process. There's going to be little things that they're going to try and do.